Welcome back to Fresh Outlook, everybody. I'm your host, Logan Crawford. The issue of immigration is front and center in the U.S. political debate as the candidates who want to convince Americans that he or she is the best person for the job puts forth their proposals on illegal immigration and border security. Donald Trump, as you might know, has been the most outspoken, kicking off his campaign with remarks aimed at those who come into the United States illegally from Mexico. Let's say hello to the Fresh Outlook think tank. I am joined by Alex Isbell, a immigration attorney at Solo, Isbell and Palladino, Jacqueline Olvera, an assistant professor in the Department of Anthropology and Sociology at Adelphi, and I am joined once again by Alain Sanders, a college professor as well. Alex, I'll begin with you. Should we open up our borders, let anybody who's poor and needy come into our country? It's only fair. We have these artificial borders on the north in Canada and the south in Mexico, and just come on in.
Well, immigration reform and illegal immigration is not solely about the poor and the needy. Some of the largest groups of undocumented immigrants in the United States are those who have come with visas and overstayed. What is clear is that piecemeal immigration reform has never worked. It's clear that that's historically been the way that this problem has tried to be solved. And what we need to do is have a comprehensive look at what needs to be changed, how it should work, who should be affected, and opening the borders, even if that is a good idea, it's unrealistic. It's never going to happen.
Alan, are we a lifeboat? We only can support so many people before we start to sink.
Well, there's only limited resources in any country, but I don't think we've reached anywhere near that point. I think the basic issues here are territorial integrity. Do we protect our territorial integrity? That's a certain basic component of statehood, but also rule of law and also fairness, okay? So you have people who have broken the law and have breached our territorial integrity, but they're here. There's 11 million of them. Mostly that's because of our own fault. We have not patrolled our border correctly. So what do we do about that? We were lax in enforcing our borders, but now we have an issue of 11 million people. How do we deal with that in a fair and just way? And I think that's what the real debate is about. If you take a look at both parties, they both believe on basically the same thing: secure the border, and then try to deal with the people who are here in some sort of fair way. It seems to me there's a lot of room here for debate and for compromise, but of course it's become politicized. So you've got the Republicans taking the hard road, let's do the secure the border hard line first, and you've got the Democrats who are saying, well, we've got to deal with people who are here first. Seems to me that there's room for compromise here, and that's what it should be, a decent and honorable discussion, not a partisan debate.
Okay, Jackie, it seems like Hillary Clinton is going to be the Democratic presidential nominee. Are you familiar with her immigration policy and stance, and do you think it's a viable one?
I think that she hasn't quite set out clearly what her immigration stance is. I think all she has really said is that she's going to try to do what Obama is doing, but not in the executive order fashion. So it's still not clear what she's really going to do about immigration. I think she's been busy talking about other issues. So I think one of the things that she does need to talk about, however, is the idea that securing the border is the first and foremost priority. I think that's what most people agree on, but it actually is inaccurate to assume that securing the border is going to solve any problems. Like, there's lots of research that shows that even at the times of the heightened security of the border, there was really no impact on the flows of immigration.
And the fact is that the border has probably never been more secure than it is now. And it is probably close to being as secure as it could possibly be without actually building a wall or lining the entire southern border of the United States, arm in arm with National Guard troops. President Obama has overseen more deportations than his predecessor, I believe more than any president in history. And it's increasingly difficult to get into the United States. I believe that from especially Mexico, the number of people who are illegally entering the United States has been dropping. So I think that if you look at the data taken from the border is secure, and I think it's time to shift the debate to talk about we're doing an okay job if you're into border security, but now we need to look at what are we going to do when we talk about the second part of that.
Well, securing the border is not just a matter of law enforcement, it's a matter of what the policies are. So you also need to take a look at what is actually bringing people to the United States, what are the sociological and economic factors that bring people here, and what can we do to use our policies to reduce that flow, or at least reduce it in such a way that the people who do come here do so through a legal procedure. So securing the border is not just a matter of law enforcement, it's a matter of policy. And to do that, you have to get past the partisanship, and you have to look at the various elements and have a calm, cool, collected debate. Of course, in a campaign, that's very hard to do. So what you've got is the law enforcement edge being argued by the Republicans, and the sociological, economic edge being argued by the Democrats. One would hope that whoever wins the presidential election understands that they've only got half of the debate in their corner, and they need to talk to the other half, which will be whoever winds up losing the presidential election.
Since he brought up the topic, let's talk about Trump a little bit. Trump says he basically wants to build a wall to keep undesirable illegals out, but he would welcome with a great gate those who are desirable, those with high incomes, those who are educated, those who want to assimilate into the United States. Why is that a bad idea? I think we have enough people who are doing menial jobs in this country who have come here illegally. We can take some of the best and brightest too.
Sure. Right. I think that what's interesting about the concept of even securing the border and building this so-called wall is that it doesn't only keep people out, it keeps people in. So if you're worried about criminality, you've just enclosed criminals. The second issue is that the whole securing the border issue ignores that in addition to visa overstayers being the predominant form of undocumented people in the country right now. I just read a report by the Pew Research Center that shows that the growing number of white-collar workers is also growing among the undocumented. So it doesn't deal with the issue of, we have high-skilled workers who are undocumented, and the border issue doesn't really resolve that problem.
And from a legal standpoint, I'm not sure that looking at high skill, low skill makes any sense, because there are relatively well-functioning mechanisms that allow people with high income to come to the United States. If you invest over a certain amount of money in the United States, you can essentially buy a green card through the EB-5 program. If you are someone who has achieved an exceptionally high amount in your career as a scientist, as an artist, as an athlete, you can get a green card very quickly. I think that the reason why we need to look at this comprehensively, and perhaps where Mr. Trump is misunderstanding how the entire system works, is that lower income people often establish family ties in the United States in a way that the wealthy wouldn't. They may bring their entire family at once, whereas people who are on the lower skill are split up, or they form families in the United States that are threatened to be torn asunder by the mechanism of deportation. And I'm not sure that looking at high skill, low skill really encompasses the real problem. The system is not working, and the system needs to be reassessed, not in pieces, not by country of origin, not by income, not by skill level, but we need to look at the system.
Alan, there's a lot of people on the right who are calling for a crackdown now, not only on illegal immigration, but immigration in general. They say there's multi-millions of people here who have failed to assimilate, and that you need to freeze immigration until those people who have come to the United States become American. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, look, if you take a look at immigration historically in the United States, the vast majority of people who have come to the United States historically have not been wealthy, have not been educated. They've been basically the underclass. I mean, I think Trump and people who speak like that should take a look at the Statue of Liberty.
I'm going to let you finish the point. Can I just interject for a second?
Sure.
The difference is, I believe, when the immigrants came from the 1920s to the 1950s, is they were opposed to taking federal subsidies and handouts. Now they say as many as 90% of the people who immigrate to this country are on food stamps, 50% are on welfare.
Well, look, we've gone through some sociological changes in our society. I mean, the lack of those services affected Americans as well as it affected immigrants. So now we've developed a social welfare system that takes care of Americans, and that takes care of people that are within our borders. Now, can we take care of these people? I think so. I think we're wealthy enough. I think we are generous enough to be able to do that. But we need to have reasonable policies. And so while many people feel that some people are taking advantage of us, anybody will take advantage of any social program. And if we start to look at who takes advantage of which, you might find that some people who are middle class or very wealthy take advantage of some very important programs. The real issue is, what do you do with people who are here, who need help, and who cannot go back, because it would cost an even greater fortune to throw them back, and it will of course create all kinds of moral and civil rights issues as well. So the real issue is, what do you do with people who are here, and who are here because we failed to patrol our borders properly?
A lot of what I'm hearing, Jackie, is that they should have a path to legalization, but not citizenship. To me, that seems like a halfway solution. If the people are here, you're either going to say you can stay here and have all the rights and be a citizen and participate in our democracy, or get out. I mean, you can't have it halfway.
Right. Well, as I understand this legalization pathway, it's going to take, it keeps people on a kind of hiatus, a legal hiatus, for about 10 years before they could even have adjusted their status to be green card holders. So what it actually does is put people in a kind of limbo, and that's not good for the country either. If you think about the efforts that people put into their own communities and their own their employers, what you're saying is you're going to be here on a temporary status until we won't pick you up on the street. But ICE won't pick you up on the street, but you're still here on a kind of temporary status that, as far as I understand how the issues work, is that it makes them also still very vulnerable to immigration policies. So today, even citizens who have broken particular kinds of laws can be have their citizenship taken away or their green cards taken away. So it doesn't really solve the bigger problem. We're still creating vulnerabilities for immigrants, even this program.
And the last time the United States had a system where some people who lived here had a right to citizenship and some people didn't was before the Civil War, and that's obviously not a direct analogy, but that's a terrible system where you have some people in a country who will never be able to vote, who will never be able to be fully part of the community, and I think that stance is just sort of inexorably un-American.
Why doesn't the E-Verify system work? I mean, I do a lot of per diem and freelance work, and constantly I have to have my social security card, my passport, my driver's license, and a sample of my hair and blood in order to work. And it's documented by the people I work with. How are these people working in this E-Verify system? How do you have 11 million people working in a day and age where you must prove on every job you take that you're a citizen?
E-Verify is voluntary. And historically, the analogs and the computers that actually back that system up have been, to say that they're glitchy would be an understatement. That's a step in the right direction.
Why not make E-Verify mandatory? I mean, if you're getting serious about immigration reform, I mean, aren't we an attractive nuisance? We allow these people to come into our country, we let them stay for a decade or more. At one point, it's our fault, because we did not secure our borders, because we made it possible for them to work, and now it's unfair to kick them out, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's our fault. I mean, I think this is probably a question that's better for my neighbor here, but the push-pull factors between Mexico and Central America and the United States are greater than anywhere else on Earth. There's no border on Earth that has such wealth on one side and such poverty on the other. And I think E-Verify or not, border fence or not, we're always going to be attractive. I don't know if it's a nuisance, but that's just life.
Right, it's like having a neighbor with a big, beautiful swimming pool, and it's 100 degrees. You're going to want to go into that swimming pool. If they don't build a fence, you're going in the pool. Alan, Marco Rubio, he is Cuban-American. He's been all over the board when it comes to his immigration stance. At times he's for a pathway to citizenship, at other times he's not. He does what's politically expedient, as do all politicians. What are your thoughts on him as a candidate and possibly being the voice of some Latinos in this political year?
Well, I think he is the voice of some Latinos, and I think he is all over the place. I think you will see him solidify to some sort of a position if he actually breaks out of the pack. So his strategy right now, I think, is to break out of the pack, to make a name for himself and to project a image of leadership. Once he does that, he needs to refine his immigration program. I mean, he is of Cuban heritage. He has at one point backed a comprehensive immigration agreement, which he then backed away from. But then if you ask him some very specific questions about it, he likes certain points of that program, including eventual citizenship for the illegal immigrants who are here. His latest position is that he wants to do it gradually. Rather than have a comprehensive program, he thinks this should be sort of a step-by-step approach. I'm not sure that's the correct approach, but it might be the correct approach to get elected. So I think he needs to refine his views, but right now his big task is to break out of the pack.
Jackie, is there a candidate out there that has a good policy stance when it comes to immigration? I would assume Bernie Sanders does. I think he would come, let them all come in, send them all to college, give them all free phones, give them all houses.
Well, he doesn't, I don't think, go quite that far. So I think part of the problem with, first of all, I want to say Marco Rubio doesn't represent. He only represents a sliver of the Latino population.
Is not a monolithic community either. They have divergent viewpoints like any other group. Right?
But I think the issue, though, with thinking about immigration is that we tend to, and I think this is why Bernie Sanders has a little bit more better perspective on it, is that he understands that immigration in the U.S. is a global pattern, right? So we can continue and focus on what's happening within the confines of our territory, but we have to understand that what is driving immigration is not just work, but our consumption patterns. So the fact that we can have a cup of coffee in the morning is usually being provided by some low-wage worker.
And the prices haven't changed really in half a century for a cup of coffee or a bottle of soda or a hot dog.
Sure. So that we are driving the flows of migration, whether it's legal or undocumented, because of our consumption patterns. So it is to our benefit to often have low-wage workers, whether they're documented or not.
Okay, sounds great. We've got about 1 minute left. I'm going to give you all 20 seconds closing thoughts. Alex, I'll begin with you.
Well, I think it may be a little bit early to really have a good conversation about what the immigration conversation will be in the 2016 election, because as we're still in primary seasons, the Republicans are going to drift to the right, the Democrats are going to drift to the left, and Hillary Clinton is probably going to not say a whole lot so that she doesn't say anything that risks her status as a front runner.
I feel like somebody came up with a good plan. Everybody would be on board. You know what I mean? I really do, because I think people do want this solved, and I do think conservatives have a heart that they don't want to see people, put on trucks and taken south of the border. Other than a few reactionary, extreme people. Alan, your final thoughts?
Well, I would say continue the conversation in the political debate for the election, but keep the door open to talk to the other side, no matter who wins, because it will be settled in Congress, and it will be a matter of compromise, and it will not be whatever any single candidate argues should be the solution.
Jackie, final thought?
I think part of the issue also is that we seem to be focused on a federal policy, but we sometimes are underestimating what local, as we were talking earlier, local and states, localities, municipalities and states are doing to also control immigration, and even though it's not in their, they don't technically have a right to do it, but I think if there's going to be reform, there also has to be something that's being done at the state and local levels.
Be careful what you wish for.
Right.
If you look at Arizona and
we don't want that to happen.
All right. Jackie, Alex, Alan, thank you so much for your thought, being part of the panel today. When we come back, it is time for the lightning round, when we look at the week's top interesting stories in lightning fast fashion. More on that after this.